Good morning, students. I, Purnima, welcome you to my class of English. And today, children, we will be doing the question answer from this lesson, the thief story. First, I will be telling you about the small question answer, short question answer, then long, and how to write the tips for giving the long question answer, because two long question will always be there in your examination. Okay. So the thief story, first of all, it is written by Ruskin Bond. Okay, he was born on 19 May 1934. I've already discussed with you. And children, after his father's death, he spent 4 years in London, where he started writing his first novel, The Room on the Roof. And now he is recognized as world leading writers of English. Okay, and he is known for his short stories. Uh, he currently lives in Landior, Missouri, Ivy Cottage, which has been his residence since 1964. Now, children, I will be discussing you about the main points of the story. That the narrator Hari Singh, though his fake name was Hari Singh, nobody knew what was his real name. He was a thief. Okay, and he was a experienced and successful in his work. He was only 15 years of age. Luck was against him, and children, he thought of targeting Anil. The narrator introduced himself to Anil as Hari Singh. He changed his name every month to escape arrest. Hari Singh wanted to work for Anil, but Anil had no money to pay him regularly. Anil had no regular income and used to write for his magazine. Anil asked if he could cook, and Hari Singh lied that he knew how to cook. Hari Singh cooked the food so terribly that it had to be thrown away to the stray dogs. Anil asked him to go away, but the narrator did not leave his company. He just gave him an appealing smile, and the narrator was helpless. So later on, Anil softened and told him that he would teach him not only how to cook, but he would teach him how to read and write. He also taught Hari Singh to write his name and promised to teach him to write whole sentence and add number. It was quite pleasant for Hari Singh to work for Anil, and he made a rupee a day from buying the day's supplies. One evening, Anil came home with a small bundle of notes, as he had just sold a book to a publisher. Hari Singh saw Anil tuck the money under the mattress. Hari crept up to bed, slid his hand under the mattress, and took the money out. Anil sighed in sleep that Hari Singh started and quickly left the room. That means Hari Singh came to know that he is being watched. When the narrator was on the road, he counted the notes. It was all 600 in 50s. With that money, he would thought he was thinking that he would live like a Arab for a week or two. He could easily jump into the Lucknow Express, but hesitated and remained standing at the platform. His conscience started telling that the person who had trust you so much, you have robbed. Now Anil had no friends to go, and the only person he knew was Anil, whom he had robbed a few hours ago. It was a chilly night, and light rainfall or drizzle added to his problem. Hari Singh had forgotten about his education in the excitement of theft, and realized that education could bring him more money than a few hundred of rupees. Remember, children, he knew this thing, that education could bring him more money than a few hundred rupees which he had been stealing. Hari Singh realized that he had done a blunder mistake. He wanted to return. He went back to the room and put the wet notes under the mattresses from where he had stolen. Next morning, Anil stretched out his hand towards the narrator holding a 50 rupees note. Anil told that he had made some money and he would pay Hari Singh regularly. Actually, Anil knew everything about the theft, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. So, children, these were all the important points. Now, what is the theme of the story? The Ruskin Bond, the thief story is more than a thief story. Very less about theft, very more. It is stressing about the human values and relationship. So, generally, this story is throwing light on human values and relationship. It is easier for a thief to rob a greedy man, but it is not easier for a thief to rob a careless and honest person and that person trusted him with his closed eyes. Hari Singh did steal Anil money, but he could not even run with it because he had this feeling the person who was giving him education, who had trusted him so how much, even he had given the key of his room, and he is going to deceive such type of man. Finally, children, he took a decision that he could not deceive such a person. He had no friends because he regarded them to trouble, then help. The only person he knew was the man he had robbed few hours ago. Moreover, Anil was ready to educate Hari Singh. The thief conscience pricked him. He told he only wanted one thing in his life, that was education, and that was given to him by Hari Singh and to whom he had robbed. So his conscience pricked him. He came back to Anil, crept to his bed, put the money under the mattress, slipped the money under the mattress from where he had stolen it a few hours. Anil also made him realize that you knew everything. So, children, now we will be doing the NCRT textual question. So, who does I refer to in this story? I refer to Hari Singh, a thief. He always robbed his employers. What 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 is he a fairly successful hand at? Yes, he is fairly successful hand at robbing the people, um, especially his employers. What does he get from Anil to return for his work? He gets meal from Anil to return for his work. How does the thief think Anil will react to the theft? The thief thinks that Anil will not be sad for his loss, but he will be unhappy at the loss of the faith which he had in Hari Singh. So, children, please note it again. Anil will not be sad for his loss, but he will be unhappy at the loss of faith he had in Hari Singh. What does he say about the different reaction of people when they are robbed? He says that different people have different reactions on their losses. As the greedy man shows fear, the rich shows anger, and the poor shows acceptance. Does Anil realize that he has been robbed? Yes, Anil realizes that he has been robbed because he finds that the bundle uh, of the notes are wet, but he does not express to Hari Singh. Now, children, think about these are the question answer of page number 13. Question number 1. What are Hari Singh's reaction to the prospect of receiving an education? Do the change over time? Hint, compare, for example, the thought. So this hint is given. I knew that once I could write like an educated man. This is given. There would be no limit to what I could achieve. With these later thoughts, whole sentence I knew could one day bring me more than a few hundred rupees. It was a simple matter to steal and sometimes just a simple matter to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man, was something else. What makes him return to Anil? Hari Singh is a thief, but his reaction to the prospect of receiving an education is quite positive. Hari Singh is a thief, but his reaction to the prospect of receiving an education is quite positive. He seems to know the value of education. His ideas doesn't change, rather they are strengthened with the passage of time. He thinks if he could write like an educated man, there would be no limit to achievement. No doubt, in the excitement and heat of the theft, Hari Singh forgets about his education. But later on, he realized that education could bring him more money than the amount he had stolen. He doesn't want to be caught by the police, but want to be really a big man, a clever and respected man. His deep urge to learn to read and write brings him back to Anil. Now, what does Anil not why does Anil not hand the thief over to the police? Do you think most people would have done so? In what ways is Anil different from such employers? Anil knew everything about the theft. He knew how Hari Singh breached his trust and stole the money that was lying under the mattress. He only sighed in his sleep and turned his side towards the thief. Even when Hari Singh put the note at the same place from where they had been stolen, Anil did not show that he knew about it. Neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything that he knew everything about the theft. He did not hand the thief over to the police either. He did not complain to him. He did not scolded him, said to him. So this proved that Anil was a thorough gentleman and a very generous person. He had human sympathy and compassion. He wanted to teach him writing complete sentence and give him education so one day he don't have to do all this thing. He wanted to reform him without showing it. Instead of handing him over to the police, he gave him 50 rupees note and promised to pay him regularly. So children, definitely Anil was a very generous and different from other employees. Now talk about page 13, question number page 13. Do you think people like Anil and Hari Singh are found only in fiction or are there such people in real life? It takes all sort of people to make this world. Yes, there are people like Hari Singh and Anil in this world. You may find a thief like Hari Singh who realizes the value of education. He forgets about education during the heat and excitement of the threat. Later on, realizing the value of education, he come back to Anil. Anil is a large-hearted and compassionate person. He wanted to educate Hari Singh and pay him regularly. Question number 2. Do you think it is significant details in the story that Anil is a struggling writer? Does this explain his behavior in any way? So, so we will discuss this question also. Anil does not have a regular income. He is a struggling writer who writes for magazine. Anil can't afford to pay Hari Singh regularly. but he allowed Hari Singh to stay with him and promised to teach him to write complete sentences. When he received a substantial amount of money, he gave him a 50 rupees note and promised to pay him regularly. Have you met anyone like Hari Singh? Can you think and imagine the circumstances that can turn a 15-year-old boy into a thief? No, I've not met anyone like Hari Singh in life so far. Or if you have met, then you have to discuss, children. Yes, I can imagine and think about the circumstances that can turn a 15-year-old boy into thief. Circumstances can shape a man accordingly. Where is the story set? You can get clues from the name of the persons and places mentioned which language or languages are spoken in these places. Do you think the characters in the story spoke to each other in English? The story somewhere seems to be set somewhere in UP because Hari Singh, Anil, these are the very common name found here. The cultural background and the language of the character reveal this fact. No, the character in the story does not speak to each other in English. Hari Singh is uneducated and doesn't know how to write complete sentence. Hari Singh hesitated to jump into a compartment of the Lucknow Express. This clearly shows that the people of this region speaks Hindi. Children, now I am coming to the question 30 to 40 word question from the sample paper. What was the narrator or the boy thief, Hari Singh? Who was the narrator or the boy thief, Hari Singh? Hari Singh was a thief. Even at the age of 15, he was a seasoned, experienced, and successful thief. He used to change his name every month to avoid the police and his former employees. He knew all the tricks of his trade. He knew how to steal money even when the money was tucked under the victim's bed. How and when how and when did Hari Singh meet Anil? Hari Singh met Anil during a wrestling match. He found Anil easygoing, kind, and simple enough to suit his purpose. Anil's trusting nature could help him in stealing. Therefore, he offered himself to work for Anil. Anil had no regular income and couldn't afford to pay him. But still, Hari Singh exploited Anil's generosity and he forced Anil to keep him in his house. Anil could not afford to pay Hari Singh. Why did then he allow Hari Singh to stay with him? Hari Singh offered himself to work for Anil. Anil did not have a regular income and could not afford to pay him regularly. Hari Singh wanted to exploit such a kind-hearted and simple man like Anil. He lied that he knew how to cook. Anil was forced to allow Hari Singh to stay with him in his house. Why was it so difficult for Hari Singh to rob a trusting and unsuspecting person like Anil? The 15-year-old boy who was a thief and Hari Singh, he was Hari Singh. Hari Singh was experienced and a fairly successful hand. It was easy to rob a greedy man because he could afford to be robbed. But it was very difficult to rob a careless and unsuspecting man like Anil. The unsuspecting Anil did not even notice that he had been robbed. That could take all the pleasure out of the work or theft. Why did Hari Singh justify himself to rob Anil? No doubt, Hari Singh was experienced and clever enough to justify his act. He justified the robbing of a careless and unsuspecting man like Anil. Hari Singh told himself that he was out of practice. He must rob. If he didn't take the money, Anil would waste it on his friends. Moreover, Anil did not pay him. So for three reasons, Anil did not pay him. If he will not steal the money, he would spend it on his friend, and he was out of practice of his work. What was his work? To steal. Describe Hari Singh dilemma at the station. Why did not he jump into a compartment of the Lucknow Express when he could? When he reached the station, Hari Singh did not stop at the ticket office because he never bought a ticket earlier. The Lucknow Express was just moving out. He could have jumped into one of the carriage, but he hesitated. Perhaps he had not made a final decision in this regard. What did Hari Singh think when he was standing alone on the deserted platform? The train had gone. Hari Singh was in a dilemma. He was standing alone on the deserted platform. He had no idea where to spend the night. He had no friends, nor did he want to go to a hotel. The only person whom knew was Anil could perhaps help him. Okay, whom he had robbed a few hours ago. Then, children, there are many questions which I will not discuss. I will tell you what did Hari Singh do in the Madan. Okay, so you have to write that that night was chilly. There was a heavy rainfall. Okay, to Anil Hari Singh discovered his shirt and pajamas stuck to his skin. The rain was becoming heavy. He sat down in the shelter of the clock tower. He felt for the notes. They were damp from the rain. Did Hari Singh understand the value of education? How can you prove it? Hari Singh clearly understood the value of education. Education could bring him respect, status, and money. If he learned how to write like an educated person, then sky would be the limit for him. In the heat and excitement of the threat, he forgot all about it. He decided to have an education at any cost and went back to Anil. Why did not Anil hand Hari Singh over to the police even when he knew all about the theft? Anil was careless and unsuspecting but not a fool. He knew how the boy stole money out of the daily shopping. He also knew all about the theft of his 600 rupees. He could have easily handed him over to the police. However, he did not want to ruin Hari Singh's life. He wanted to give him an education to the unfortunate boy. So he gave a 50 rupees note and promised to pay him regularly. Neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything about the theft because he don't want to spoil the life of Hari Singh. So, children, in the long question, first of all, how you will write the long question, 3 to 4 paragraph, and you have to write everything in sequence, no scribbling, no cutting, and you have to think twice, children. Um, you have to think twice. Okay. So, let me start with the first long question. He was the most trusting person I had ever met. Justify this statement of Hari Singh about his benefactor Anil. Did he breach Anil's trust? After his first introduction, Hari Singh understood Anil's nature and his character rather well. He lied that he knew how to cook. Instead, Anil allowed Hari to work for him. Even at the age of 15, Hari Singh was an experienced and successful hand. He was very expert in stealing. He knew all the tricks of his trade. So from the daily supplies, he used to make 1 rupees every day from buying the daily supplies. Anil knew, but he did not mind it. He did not say anything to him. Anil was really a trusting person. He had given Hari a key to the door and he could come and go as he pleased. But it was so difficult to rob him. It is easy to rob a greedy man. It was difficult to rob a careless and trusting man like Anil. Anil sometimes he did not even notice that he had been robbed. that took all the pleasure out of Hari Singh's work. Anil was not a fool. He knew all about the theft, when and how it was committed. Neither his lips nor eyes showed that he saw Anil placing the money under the mattress bag. Trust begets trust. Trust begets trust. Untimely, ultimately, the boy thief realized that the only person who could help him was a man whom he had robbed few hours earlier. Naturally, Anil was the most trusting man Hari Singh had ever met in his life. Anil forgot breach of his trust but rewarded Hari by giving a 50 rupees note and promised to pay him regularly. Now, how did Hari Singh steal the money? Describe the circumstances that brought him back to work for Hari Singh. What was the main motivating factor that forced him to take that decision? Anil had sold a book to publisher. He got a good sum of money in return. Hari Singh saw him tuck the money under the mattress of his bed. The boy thief was an experienced hand. He breached Anil's trust and stole the money. He counted and found a sum of 600 in 50s. He realized that with the money he could live like a rich Arab at least for a week or so. Hari Singh tried to run away with money but failed. He was actually struggling with himself. He deliberately missed the Lucknow Express. He sat thinking about himself on a bench uh, on a chilly night. He came to a conclusion that he had no friends. The only person who could help him was Anil, and he had robbed him also a few hours earlier. Then came the realization what Anil was doing for him. He promised to give him education. Hari Singh realized that education could bring respect and money to him. In the heat and excitement uh, of the theft, he had forgotten about the education. Getting an education was the main motivating force that brought the boy thief Hari Singh back to Anil house. Describe the sequence of events that took place after Hari Singh stole the money and then elucidate. Evaluate Hari Singh as a thief and as a human being. Hari Singh was a seasoned thief even at the age of 15. He knew all the tricks of his trade. As a thief, he knew how to hoodwink his master and make 1 rupee every day out of buying of the day's supplies. And he, a seasoned thief, stole 600 rupees from under the mattress. With that money, he could live like a rich Arab for a week or two. He came to the station but deliberately missed the Lucknow Express. He was struggling with himself. He came to the Madan and was drenched in the rain on a chilly November night. He had no friends and did not like to go to a hotel either. He was in a dilemma. Then good sense prevailed and he decided to go back to the main man whom he had robbed a few hours earlier. His love for education was the motivating force that led him to the decision. So, as a thief, he was quite an experienced and fairly a successful hand, but love, generosity, and human compassion of Anil helped him in transforming him into a better human being. He realized the value of education. Only education could give him respect and status and money. So, children, this is all. Then, children, we will be having one question is about character sketch. In character sketch, we have to write the positive quality and then the negative quality. Taking the from every point, we have to give the example from the book. Like Anil, if let's take Anil, he was a generous person. So you have to prove how he was too generous. In spite of knowing that about the theft, he did not say anything to Anil. Anil Singh told him lie in the beginning that he knew how to cook, and the first day he cooked was terrible. He had to give the food to the stray dog, but then he did not scold at him. So all this, there first the positive character, then the negative character should be discussed. So with this, children, I end my video here. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.